seat.
We all live for someone to die for, someone to take off the weight of the world for, someone to stand beside with nothing but bullets fly. And when the day's done, everything I've done, anything I've lost is worth whatever cost. 'Cause now that you're around, nothing can hurt me now. And love shouldn't have to be a war, but if I have to, I'll fight 'em all. No one's gonna tell us what to do now. You and me are gonna start a revolution. You and me against the world, there ain't no confusion. We're gonna shout it out, we're gonna scream it loud. Tonight we're gonna start a revolution. Tonight we're gonna start a revolution. Everybody's here with us, there's no way we're losing. We're gonna turn it up, 'cause we don't give a fuck. Tonight we're gonna start a revolution. And love shouldn't have to be a war, but if I have to, I'll fight 'em all. No one's gonna tell us what to do now. You and me are gonna start a revolution. You and me against the world, there ain't no confusion. We're gonna shout it out, we're gonna scream it loud. Tonight we're gonna start a revolution. Tonight we're gonna start a revolution. Everybody's here with us, there's no way we're losing. We're gonna turn it up, 'cause we don't give a fuck. Tonight we're gonna start a revolution. Tonight we're gonna start a revolution. You and me against the world, there ain't no confusion. We're gonna shout it out, we're gonna scream it loud. Tonight we're gonna start a revolution. Tonight we're gonna start a revolution. Everybody's here with us, there's no way we're losing. We're gonna turn it up, 'cause we don't give a fuck. Tonight we're gonna start a revolution. Revolution.
I don't know about you, but I look at that and how could you not want to be a part of what's going on, whether in the organization or, like I want to buy a red iPhone. I don't know why there's no red iPhones. And if Joel's still here, maybe,
Maybe he can make it happen.
Please,
want
Joel,
one
make
too.
it happen. Exactly. I want to remind everyone that you can still tweet questions, and we're going to just sit in conversation and talk about not just red, but the whole form of why red exists. So tweet away. The first question I have for you, Zach, is that red has this interesting past because it started as a for-profit, and then now it's a non-profit. And so could you tell us, what's the story here? Why did it start one way? Why did it change? What's behind that? And what changed about it as a result?
Yeah, so Red was founded in 2006. This is way before the time of B Corps and way before the time of Products for Good. I mean, at that time, I think the only examples that were even similar in the category were maybe Newman's Own and Ben & Jerry's. But this was before Warby Parker and Tom's and all of the businesses that have erupted since then. And so what Bono and Bobby Shriver were really trying to prove with this model is that you can have a win-win-win formula, that philanthropy and capitalism can have a happy marriage, and that we can take things that people want to do anyway and turn those into levers for good. And so I think as you said, when Red was founded, it was a for-profit. I think that there were a few reasons for that. One of those was that they needed, that was before my time, but they needed to build the brand of Red. And that's quite a costly endeavor. And they also needed to prove that the model was ROI positive. Fast forward a few years, the economic landscape changed a lot. I think we were also starting to realize that Red could be leveraged to affect policy change in addition to being a fundraising mechanism. And so there's another organization called the One Campaign, which Bono also founded. It's a global advocacy and grassroots lobbying group. And we sort of realized that the two could fit together like yin and yang, where one was trying to affect public policy change, so getting governments to increase their foreign aid. Red was working in the private sector, trying to get corporations to step up. And from a community perspective, one is about getting its community to use their voice, sign a petition, call your congressman, have a meetup. One, Red wants your money. Take out your wallet or your pocketbook and buy a product. So we realized that they could fit really nicely together and that we could actually do more together.
I like this idea that through the lifetime of an organization, whether it's a corporation or not, it can change. It can evolve from one thing into an entirely different thing. After watching Phil talk about like all the great things IBM's done through its life, now I wonder, like, okay, IBM, make yourself a nonprofit. What does that do to you, right? Like, can you imagine a big company doing that? I want to bring up something because, in the history of Red, there has been criticism. And I think it's a valid viewpoint in the sense that, and you probably have heard it even in this community, our problems are so big and need to be directly sort of head-on redesigned or solved. Consumerism is part of the problem. It's not the solution. So here's this model that says, buy new stuff and we'll do something good with it. And a lot of people sort of get their back up and say, we're not going to solve these problems by buying more stuff. How do you react to that?
Well, I think you're never going to stop people from buying stuff. So if we can take something that people are doing and make that have an aspect of social change, then we're doing something good. I think the other thing that's really important about Red is one thing I love about Red, coming from all the different companies that you listed that I was at before, every year when we do our planning, we still have the same two goals. Raise money for the Global Fund, which is the recipient of all of the money that we raise, and raise heat and awareness around the cause. And so by diverting some of the marketing spends that these companies were going to be spending to market their products, to market instead the product Red products, and to market the cause as part of that, is really letting people know, keeping the urgency on the cause, and letting people know that simple actions can have a great impact. I mean, I think you saw a little bit of it in the video. When we launched a partnership with Bank of America this year, we did it on the Super Bowl. Now, Bank of America was going to do a Super Bowl ad with or without Red. We got them to take that very substantial marketing spend and to make it about Red. And so we were lucky enough to have the participation of U2 performing a new single that they donated to Red. But the call to action, download a single for free within a 36-hour window and they'll donate $1. We raised $3.1 million in 36 hours. And as you saw, the medication costs 40 cents a day. So that is a really big impact, not to mention the awareness, because it had a cause attached to it. Oprah and Ellen and President Clinton and all of these leaders and people with huge followings and huge communities were messaging about it. So the viral effect that happens, not only when you marry something that people are going to do anyway, which is purchasing, marketing spends, which are going to be spent anyway, and then infusing the cause and this aspect of social good and social change into it, it really does achieve the win-win-win.
Well, and I think it's totally fair to say you're not making products that wouldn't have been sold anyway. You're literally just making a different color of the same thing that people are considering. Maybe this helps them buy the iPod Nano instead of the, is there another MP3 player? I don't know that they could buy other than an iPod. But, the phone, right? Like instead of buying a Samsung, maybe they would buy an iPhone. So I think that that's absolutely legitimate. You've you've set a really high bar, because Red, because of the model, has been able to say, yeah, 100% of all the money that's collected through those purchases goes to AIDS in Africa. But and I can only imagine as a nonprofit, like, sitting there thinking, well, how are you paying for salaries and the janitors and the electric? Like, you have overhead as a nonprofit, so where's that coming from?
Yeah, so we're privately funded. A good portion of our funding comes from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which is obviously one of the leaders in the philanthropic space. But we have a few other private grants as well. We are a very small team. There's 17 of us in a very small office in Chelsea. So we keep it very, very tight and run a very lean organization to ensure that we are, focusing solely on those two goals and making sure that we're achieving it, and to avoid overgrowth.
Fair enough. 17 people, $225 million divided by 17. 275 divided by 17 people. That is a pretty good return per person, right?
It is. We definitely, when we look at any of the grants that the organizations give to cover our operational overhead, we say, look at the ROI on that. Yes, you could just make a donation to the Global Fund, and if you do, that's great. Thank you. But if you give it to us, we'll double it several times over.
Nice.
In addition to getting people engaged with the cause and keep heat going around.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
We have a question from the audience. What does Red do to get people more involved in doing good beyond buying more stuff?
Yeah, I mean,
other avenues?
Yeah, I think that one part of Red is the badge effect that happens. So you see people walking down the streets with the Red Beats headphones. You know that they're the iconic inspired T-shirts from the Gap days. You know that person is socially responsible. But this is why we've sort of expanded the model a little bit to allow social actions to trigger donations as well. Product will always be a core of what we do, but we think it's really important that there are lots of ways for people to be read. And so, we're really, really active on social media. We were the first cause to have over 1 million followers on Facebook and 1 million on Twitter. We set the world record for the most number of Vine videos created for a cause. We literally turned Twitter red on World AIDS Day a few years ago. Right now, we have a campaign with Bank of America and Nike where you can pledge your miles to Red online at nike.com/onestepforred, and then use the Nike running app. Every mile you run over the next 7 weeks will trigger a 40-cent contribution from the bank. And in the first week, we had over 150,000 miles pledged for Red. So people are sharing that. They're tweeting about it. They're messaging about it. The viral effect that happens from that is what really helps get us in front of as many eyeballs as possible. And we also, I think there was, I come from the corporate world, so I have a competitive edge. So, the first few months I was at Red, I'd be like, damn, breast cancer. God, Susan G. Komen, pink everywhere, And now I'm very supportive of all of them. You know what? If you're doing good, good for you. ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, great. Wish I thought of it. Damn it. We tried to support other organizations as well and highlight topical things that other organizations are doing to show everybody that we as a community have a responsibility to pay it forward and to do social good.
Awesome. Because we're following on the Susan and Jordan segment, do you have an opinion about, is one corporate form better than another in your experience to do these kinds of social missions?
It's really hard. I think B Corps are really, really interesting because of the hybrid nature of them. I mean, a lot of times people ask me why I think Red is so successful and what makes us different. And I always say nobody at Red comes from the not-for-profit world. Now, I'm not dissing the not-for-profit world in any sense, but I think a lot of charities are very sort of structured. They do their gala, they do their direct mail campaign, they have their their renewing donors and things like that. And we always try to look outside of the box and try to not go the opposite direction. And so I think the rise of B Corps is sort of fostering that creative environment where people are saying, hey, how can we come up with new ways to marry these two initiatives of profitability and philanthropy.
Thank you, Suze, because she's helped make this happen. we have the same kind of conversation happening within our school with our students about there's a lot of misunderstandings between for-profit and nonprofit, and people immediately usually think, oh, nonprofit equals charity, and that's just one of the forms. And from what I can tell, sort of decreasingly the form of choice, because if you don't have some sort of revenue model, if you're just living off grants and the goodwill of organizations and donors, et cetera, the moment that dries up, the moment some donor's mission changes or goals change, you're scrambling. It's not a very stable form of a sustainable business and delivery. And so having a revenue model as a nonprofit isn't a bad thing, and having a social mission as a for-profit is not a bad thing either. It's just not necessarily the thing we're used to in the last 70 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's become expected now. Consumers expect that a corporate brand is going to have some sort of aspect for good, some sort of philanthropic cause built into their corporate DNA. And I think we're seeing the rise of the millennials as a workforce are using that as a deciding factor on what companies they're going to work for and what companies they're going to patronize. So there's definitely been a huge shift in the last 5 years.
Thank goodness, yeah. We have another question from Twitter. Who designed the red design language, and who was the first company to buy in?
That's a great question. So it was, and you're going to kill me, I don't know the name of the agency that actually designed the red logo. People...
What? Hold on. Who is it?
Yes, you are correct.
Good.
People also ask, why is it called red and why is it in parens? So it's called red because red is the color of emergency. There are two reasons why it's in the parens, and that was part of the design language that I think was brilliant. The more squishy-gishy reason is it's an embrace, and so when we put a partner logo in the parens, it's embracing them and it's elevating both brands to the power of red. The more practical reason that Susan would enjoy is that you can't trademark the word red. So we needed to have some sort of embellishment in order to trademark it. The first company to buy into it was American Express. So Red actually launched in the UK with a red American Express card, and then we brought it to the States and launched it on Oprah with Motorola, Apple, Nike, and Armani, and a few other partners.
Fantastic. You had alluded to when we were talking before about new things happening around Red. What's next? Is it new colors? Is it new missions? Is it new products?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about Red is we are, while we are certainly our own brand and we have our own design aesthetic and our own narrative, that is very much shifted and we can sort of morph depending on what partners we bring on. So the things that we've done with Bank of America are very different than some of the things that we're doing with Apple or with Starbucks or with Belvedere. So as we bring new partners into the fold, and you will see new partners coming out over the next year, that certainly is an opportunity for change. We were just at the Cannes Lions Festival this summer, and Bono did a seminar with Johnny Ive from Apple, which was moderated by Shane Smith, the CEO and founder of Vice Media. And so at that forum, we announced that we were working on a sort of home shopping for good platform. So taking the concept of a home shopping channel, making it incredibly well produced. So think of infomercials directed by Wes Anderson or some amazing director, celebrities selling regular everyday consumer products, and doing it in a different way. And so that's something that we're working on. That
You're scaring me a little bit.
Yeah, it scares me as well. And I think of what a big undertaking it is.
Please don't get to like the Real Housewives of Red.
No, but I think we are interested in seeing. We've loosened the model a lot, and we've come up with a lot of different ways for companies to go red. And so we see this platform as an opportunity for a company to go red for a day, a week, a month, a year, without necessarily having to commit to a 3 to 5 year life cycle with multiple products and activations and things like that. And we want to give people more ways to engage with brands and to create a continued sustainable flow of contributions.
Well, and I think that also fights what a lot of nonprofits have to endure, which is this sort of charity fatigue. And, I've had 3 red iPod Nanos, but maybe I really want a black one now, but I still want to do this. So giving people more, and even the idea of a temporary red is really interesting to me. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, we've had some existing partners who have a red product, but then during key campaigns will curate a collection of existing inventory that they have that's either the colored red or African inspired or something like that that will trigger contributions. This year is an interesting year because World AIDS Day, which is December 1st, happens to fall on Cyber Monday. So what if every major e-commerce company in the world either donated a penny per dollar spent, I think it was $2.2 billion were spent online last year on Cyber Monday. Think about when you achieve that scale, what the impact of that can be.
You got 5 weeks.
Yeah, I know. We got a lot to do. I got to go. But that's sort of the headspace that we go into figuring out how we really continue to scale this and amplify what we're doing.
I really like this question, and it's a very simple question. What's the life cycle of Project Red? Like, is there a time when Red doesn't need to exist anymore? You've met your mission. Do you just move to another mission, or do you disband and say, right on, we did that, and now we're all going to go do something else?
It's interesting. It's definitely a question that we grapple with a lot internally. So the mission that you saw a little bit about in the video, which is ending transmission from mother to child, which is completely achievable. And as the video said, we went from 2002, where 1,500 babies a day were born HIV positive, to last year that was down to 650. That is one aspect of the Millennium Development Goals, which I always joke are the most important thing that nobody's ever heard of. So this was a set of 8 broad goals that the UN and governments established in 1999 that we as a global community wanted to achieve by the end of 2015. So half the Earth's population having access to clean drinking water, those types of things. And this falls into there. So 2015 is a very important year for the global health community as we reach the deadline for these goals. Now, in full honesty, some countries are on track to end mother-to-child transmission, and some aren't. And things like the Ebola crisis can throw a very unexpected curveball into all the progress that we made and are greatly weakening already fragile healthcare systems. So we are staying on track, and we are going to continue on this particular mission. After that, we definitely look at broadening to AIDS in other geographies, other aspects of the HIV/AIDS cause. We always say the beginning of the end of AIDS, so then we'll move into the middle of the end of AIDS. We always joke that we want to put ourselves out of business, that we want to find a cure, and then we pack up and go home. But I always say, no, we'd never do that. There's always going to be another issue that's going to need help. There's always going to be another geography or demographic that's going to need our help. We've built a lot of equity in this brand. We've built a community. And so, yes, I could see us eventually going to different colors and having blue for water and yellow for energy or things like that. But for now, we're staying the course. We're staying very focused on our mission, and hopefully within our lifetime, we will see the end.
I was going to ask about Ebola. Has it impacted your delivery of AIDS medicine in places that you already are?
Yeah, so as a reminder, we are a fundraising mechanism for the Global Fund, which handles all the disbursements and things like that. Yes, it does. It has shut down clinics and facilities that are integral in delivering medications. It has created a fear on the ground in Africa with people going to the hospitals because they're scared they're going to actually get it there. There was a really great article in, I think, the Washington Post today about how Liberia and some of the countries that are hardest hit by Ebola are seeing huge declines in infant vaccinations because the parents aren't educated and they fear that that's what's actually making people sick, and that if they take their children to the clinics, they're going to get Ebola.
That sounds strangely familiar to hear.
Yes, it is kind of scary, but it just reminds us of how fragile fragile all of the progresses that we've made. And actually 2013 was a very important year. We hit, when I say we, I mean the global health community, we hit the tipping point in AIDS where more people were freshly put on antiretroviral medications than were newly diagnosed with the disease. And so that is, you sort of get over the hill that, okay, we're making more progress than taking steps backwards. But again, that's such a fragile accomplishment that, that could go away because of this. So it's definitely something that's very important and on our radar.
Great. Can you talk a little bit about how when you guys started, there was no social media. So can you talk a little bit about how you've leveraged social media to not just create awareness, but maybe create new mechanisms for
Yeah. I mean, it's the main way that we communicate with people. We generally don't drive people to red.org. We like to fish where the fish are, and especially because millennials are our target demographic. They are the socially conscious consumers and the people that are really driving corporations to do good and for people to be more socially responsible. So, I mentioned a few of the campaigns that we've done, but it's really about getting people to share, getting people to badge. We did something this summer which we had never done before. We did a campaign called Eat Red, Drink Red, Save Lives, which was the first time that we had engaged the culinary community. And this was a big deal for us. We opened up the Red brand. We let small business owners who've always been knocking at our door, but unfortunately we didn't have the capacity to work with them, to interpret the Red brand. And so, we had this hashtag 86AIDS. If you look at it on Instagram, it was so heartwarming for us to see how people sort of took it and ran with it, and people were drawing the logo on sandwich boards and on the chalkboard, special board in their mom and pop restaurants and things like that. And we asked people to take nomsies, which was a mashup of nom nom and selfie. So take a food selfie. These were simple ways that people anywhere in the world could activate and get involved in the campaign and help spread it. And so those are, we really do try to build things virally. I think the Bank of America, campaign on the Super Bowl was a great example. But we continue to, we just launched a Snapchat account. We're just launching on Tumblr, which I know hopefully all of you will be excited about, being designers. So, we're constantly trying to leverage new platforms, figure out how we can engage those communities, how we can sort of adjust our narrative and our persona to fit that audience and get them engaged in it.
It seems like that's the beginning of sort of maybe open sourcing Red to some extent. Do you see the possibility of pushing that further?
It's difficult. We have this iconic portfolio of brands. We very much curate the brands that are come into the Product Red portfolio. And I will say, people ask all the time, like, what is the through line that ties all of these companies together? And I always say, I think it's beautiful design. We are very conscious of being a design-led company. And that all of the products and the partners that we work with have that as one of the core attributes of their brand. Just last November, we did a partnership with Sotheby's, and we did a design auction curated by Johnny Ive and Mark Newson that generated over $26 million. It was such an amazing project to work on.
And some amazing things were created.
Some amazing pieces. But it was really core to I think our brand values. And so while we certainly are interested in opening Red up a little bit during key moments, we also need to be somewhat protective and make sure that it's not being abused and that it's being held in the right company.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. You've built an incredible, valuable brand. It's nice of you to sort of let it live a little bit in other people's hands, but of course, you don't want to lose complete control. You don't want things to be done under Red that aren't Red, right?
Exactly.
Nice.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I can't thank you enough for being gracious enough to step in at a moment's notice and having such a great story to tell, and then sharing it with us so eloquently.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thanks, Zach, with me.